Keanu Reeves had always been a man of few words, someone who preferred actions over flashy declarations. His quiet charm and humble demeanor made him stand out in Hollywood, a place often filled with noise and ego. People admired him not just for his talent as an actor, but also for the way he carried himself, with kindness, sincerity, and respect for others. Yet even someone like Keanu wasn't immune to controversy. What started as a peaceful evening at a luxury hotel would soon spiral into something far bigger than anyone could have imagined. It all began on a cool autumn night when Keanu checked into one of the most exclusive hotels in Los Angeles. He was there for a series of promotional events tied to his latest blockbuster film. The movie had already generated buzz worldwide, and fans were eager to see their favorite star grace red carpets and interviews. But despite the glitz and glamour surrounding his career, Keanu remained grounded. That night, after wrapping up a long day of meetings, he decided to take a short walk through the hotel's grand lobby before heading back to his suite. As he stepped out of the elevator, Keanu wore a simple black jacket paired with dark jeans, a look that matched his understated personality. Around his neck hung a small silver cross, barely noticeable unless you looked closely. For Keanu, this cross wasn't just another piece of jewelry. It carried deep meaning. It reminded him of his mother's teachings about faith, resilience, and finding strength in difficult times. Over the years, the cross had become a constant companion, accompanying him through moments of triumph and heartbreak alike. To him, it symbolized hope, a reminder that no matter how tough life got, there was always light ahead. The hotel itself was breathtakingly beautiful, with marble floors reflecting soft golden lights from ornate chandeliers above. Guests lounged in plush chairs, sipping expensive cocktails while discussing business deals or sharing laughter with friends. Everything seemed perfect until Keanu entered the scene. As he strolled casually across the lobby, a young woman sitting nearby glanced up from her phone and spotted him. At first she smiled faintly, recognizing the famous face immediately. But then her eyes landed on the cross dangling around his neck. Something about it caught her attention, though not in a positive way. This woman happened to be an influential, social media personality known for her sharp opinions and massive following online. She prided herself on calling out celebrities whenever she felt they were behaving out of touch or hypocritical, and seeing Keanu wearing a religious symbol in such a lavish setting struck her as odd, or so she thought. Without hesitation, she pulled out her phone and discreetly snapped a photo of him. Within minutes, she uploaded the picture to her Instagram account, adding a caption that read, "Celebrities love showing off symbols of faith, but does it mean anything when you're surrounded by wealth and excess?" Her post spread like wildfire. Comments poured in almost instantly, with people debating whether Keanu's choice to wear the cross was genuine or simply performative. Some defended him, saying everyone has the right to express their beliefs however they choose. Others sided with the influencer, accusing Keanu of using religion as a prop to appear more relatable. The conversation grew heated, drawing in thousands of users who either praised or condemned him. Before long, hashtags like #Keanu and the Cross and #Faith or Fame began trending globally, turning what should have been a private moment into a public spectacle. Back at the hotel, Keanu remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing online. He continued walking through the lobby, nodding politely at passers-by and occasionally stopping to greet fans who approached him. To him, this was just another ordinary night, nothing extraordinary or controversial about it. However, whispers started to ripple through the crowd. People pointed fingers, exchanged knowing glances, and murmured under their breath. Though Keanu couldn't hear exactly what they were saying, he sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The once warm ambiance now felt tense, charged with an energy he couldn't quite place. Meanwhile, the hotel staff began receiving complaints from several guests about Keanu's appearance. One guest, visibly agitated, approached the front desk and demanded to know why someone wearing such a blatant display of religion was allowed to roam freely in a supposedly neutral environment. Another complained that seeing the cross made them uncomfortable, insisting that the hotel should enforce stricter rules regarding personal attire. These grievances piled up quickly, putting pressure on the management to act swiftly. By midnight, the situation had escalated beyond control. Social media platforms buzzed with endless discussions, memes, and accusations targeting Keanu. Journalists scrambled to write articles dissecting every angle of the story, while late-night talk show hosts joked about the absurdity of it all. Amidst the chaos, Keanu finally returned to his room, exhausted from the day's events. Little did he know that the backlash was only beginning, and that his decision to wear the cross would lead to consequences far greater than he ever anticipated. The next morning, Keanu woke up to a flood of notifications on his phone. At first, he thought it was the usual fan messages or updates from his team about the day's schedule, but as he scrolled through the alerts, his heart sank. Hundreds of tweets, comments, and news headlines were all talking about him, and not in a positive way. The photo of him wearing the cross had gone viral overnight, and the backlash was overwhelming. People were calling him everything from hypocritical to out of touch, dissecting his actions as if he had committed some grave offense. Keanu sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the screen in disbelief. He couldn't understand how something so personal to him had become the center of such heated debate. To him, the cross wasn't a statement or a fashion choice. It was a symbol of his faith and a reminder of the values he held dear. Yet here, he was being criticized by strangers who didn't know anything about him beyond what they saw online. For a moment, he considered ignoring it all, turning off his phone and pretending none of this was happening. But deep down, he knew that wouldn't solve anything. The world outside his hotel room was already reacting, and there was no escaping it. As the hours passed, the situation only grew worse. The hotel management, feeling the heat from upset guests and worried about their reputation, decided to step in. They sent a representative to Keanu's suite to discuss the matter privately. When the knock came at his door, Keanu hesitated before opening it. Standing there was a well-dressed man in a suit, looking apologetic but firm. The representative explained that several guests had complained about his decision to wear the cross in public areas of the hotel. While they respected his personal beliefs, they asked him to refrain from displaying any visible religious symbols during his stay, to avoid further disruption. Keanu listened quietly, his expression unreadable. Inside, however, he felt a mix of emotions: anger, frustration, and sadness. He understood that hotels often tried to remain neutral spaces where everyone felt welcome, regardless of their background or beliefs. But asking him to remove the cross felt like asking him to erase a part of himself. It wasn't just an accessory, it represented years of reflection, growth, and connection to something greater than himself. Removing it would feel like betraying his own identity. Politely but firmly, Keanu declined their request. He explained that the cross meant too much to him to take it off, especially because doing so would make him feel like he was hiding who he truly was. The representative nodded sympathetically, but warned that this decision might lead to more complaints and potential conflicts with other guests. Keanu thanked him for coming and closed the door, knowing full well that this conversation wouldn't end here. Word of his refusal spread quickly among the hotel staff, and soon enough tensions began to rise. By midday, the story had reached mainstream media outlets. Reporters camped outside the hotel, eager to catch a glimpse of Keanu or get a comment from him about the growing controversy. News anchors debated whether he was right to stand by his beliefs or wrong to cause discomfort for others. Some praised him for staying true to himself, while others labeled him as stubborn and uncooperative. The narrative shifted constantly, depending on who was telling the story. Meanwhile, social media remained ablaze, with hashtags like Galan and Respect Keanu, and Usher's Remove the Cross trending side by side. Fans rallied to defend him, sharing heartfelt posts about why freedom of expression mattered. Critics argued that public figures like Keanu should be mindful of how their choices affected those around them. Inside the hotel, things were getting tense. Guests whispered loudly about Keanu whenever he appeared in common areas, pointing fingers or shaking their heads disapprovingly. A few even confronted him directly, demanding to know why he refused to comply with the hotel's request. Keanu handled these encounters with grace, explaining calmly that the cross was important to him and that he hoped people could respect his perspective. but not everyone was willing to listen. One particularly vocal guest accused him of using religion as a shield to justify his behavior, sparking yet another round of arguments online. Despite the mounting pressure, Keanu tried to focus on his work. He attended scheduled interviews and promotional events, putting on a brave face for cameras and fans alike. On the surface, he seemed composed and professional, answering questions about his movie with ease. But behind the scenes, the stress was taking its toll. His team noticed that he seemed quieter than usual, retreating into himself whenever the topic of the cross came up. They urged him to address the issue publicly, hoping that a clear explanation might help ease the tension. But Keanu hesitated. He didn't want to fuel the fire, or give the impression that he was apologizing for something he believed in deeply. As the day wore on, the hotel management faced increasing scrutiny from both guests and the public. Some accused them of overstepping by asking Keanu to remove the cross, while others demanded stricter enforcement of their policies. Caught in the middle, the staff struggled to find a solution that satisfied everyone. Eventually, they issued a carefully worded statement, emphasizing their commitment to inclusivity and neutrality, while acknowledging the challenges of balancing diverse perspectives. However, this did little to quell the outrage. If anything, it amplified the debate, drawing even more attention to Keanu and his decision. By evening, Keanu found himself standing alone on the balcony of his suite, gazing out at the city skyline. The lights twinkled below, a stark contrast to the storm raging around him. He thought about the cross resting against his chest and the meaning it held for him. No matter what anyone said or did, he couldn't imagine taking it off. Not now, not ever. But he also knew that standing his ground came with consequences. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on his shoulders, leaving him unsure of what tomorrow might bring. Little did he know, the backlash was far from over. Rumors began swirling about how this incident might impact his career, with whispers of strained relationships between Keanu and the studio behind his latest film. As the night drew to a close, Keanu braced himself for whatever lay ahead, determined to stay true to his beliefs no matter the cost. The next day brought no relief for Keanu. If anything, the pressure intensified. News outlets continued to cover the controversy non-stop, with reporters dissecting every detail of his standoff with the hotel. Headlines like, "Keanu Reeves refuses to back down over cross incident" dominated morning shows and online platforms. Social media remained a battlefield, with people passionately debating whether he was right or wrong. Some called him courageous for standing up for his beliefs, while others accused him of being selfish and inconsiderate. The constant noise made it hard for anyone to focus on anything else, including Keanu himself. That morning, Keanu attended a press conference scheduled weeks in advance to promote his new movie. Normally, such events were routine for him, a chance to talk about the film, share behind-the-scenes stories, and connect with fans. But this time, the atmosphere felt different. Reporters sat ready with pens poised, not just to ask about the movie but also to grill him about the cross. As soon as the session began, questions about the controversy flooded in, overshadowing any discussion about his work. One journalist bluntly asked if Keanu regretted wearing the cross at the hotel, implying that his actions had caused unnecessary drama. Another questioned whether he thought celebrities should avoid expressing their personal beliefs in public settings altogether. Keanu handled each question with calmness, choosing his words carefully. He explained that the cross wasn't meant to make a statement. It was simply a part of who he was. "It's something I've worn for years," he said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "It reminds me of my faith, my family, and the values I grew up with. Taking it off wouldn't change what I believe, but it would feel like I'm hiding a piece of myself." His response earned nods of approval from some in the room, but others scribbled furiously in their notebooks, clearly unsatisfied. Despite his efforts to steer the conversation back to the film, the topic kept circling back to the cross. By the end of the press conference, Keanu looked visibly drained. His team huddled around him afterward, offering support and advice. They suggested issuing an official statement to clarify his position once and for all, hoping it might help ease the tension. But Keanu hesitated. He didn't want to turn the situation into a spectacle or give the impression that he was apologizing for something he believed in deeply. Still, he knew ignoring the issue wasn't helping either. After much deliberation, he agreed to release a brief message later that evening. While Keanu prepared for his statement, rumors about the fallout from the incident began swirling within Hollywood circles. Word reached him that executives from the studio funding his current project were growing concerned. They worried that the controversy surrounding Keanu could harm the film's success, especially since it relied heavily on international markets, where religious symbols often sparked debates. A source close to the production claimed that meetings were being held to discuss how to handle the situation. Some even hinted that recasting his role might be considered if the negative attention persisted. Though unconfirmed, these whispers added another layer of stress to an already overwhelming situation. As evening approached, Keanu posted his statement online. In it, he reiterated why the cross mattered so much to him, sharing anecdotes about its significance in his life. He spoke about loss, resilience, and finding strength through faith during tough times. "This isn't about making a point," he wrote. "It's about staying true to who I am. I never intended to cause discomfort or division, but I can't compromise on something so deeply personal." His words struck a chord with many, reigniting support from fans who admired his authenticity. Hashtags like #StandWithKeanu trended, again with thousands praising his courage and integrity. However, not everyone was moved by his explanation. Critics argued that Keanu's refusal to remove the cross highlighted a sense of entitlement, claiming he prioritized his beliefs over the feelings of others. Some influencers doubled down on their earlier accusations, accusing him of using emotional appeals to manipulate public opinion. Online forums buzzed with heated discussions, splitting people into two camps: those who supported Keanu and those who thought he should have compromised. Meanwhile, tensions at the hotel escalated further. Guests continued to complain, and staff struggled to maintain order. Several high-profile visitors threatened to leave unless the issue was resolved, putting even more pressure on management. Eventually, the hotel released another statement, reiterating their commitment to inclusivity and neutrality. They emphasized that they respected Keanu's beliefs, but urged him to consider the broader impact of his actions. Privately, they hoped he would reconsider his stance before things spiraled further out of control. By nightfall, Keanu found himself pacing the length of his hotel suite, phone in hand. Messages poured in from friends, colleagues, and fans alike, offering both encouragement and criticism. Some urged him to stand firm, reminding him that staying true to himself was more important than pleasing everyone. Others warned him that his career could suffer if he didn't find a way to resolve the situation diplomatically. Each message weighed heavily on his mind, leaving him torn between doing what felt right and protecting his professional future. In the midst of all this, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that the world was watching his every move. Every decision he made, from stepping outside the hotel to posting on social media, was scrutinized under a microscope. Yet, despite the chaos, one thing remained clear in his heart. He couldn't betray his beliefs. Removing the cross would mean letting external pressures dictate who he was, and that was something he refused to do. As he lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, Keanu braced himself for whatever challenges lay ahead. He knew the road wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to face it with honesty and grace. Little did he know, the studio executives had already started discussing drastic measures. Rumors of potential consequences loomed large, threatening not only his role in the current project, but also his standing in the industry. For now, though, Keanu focused on taking things one step at a time, holding on to hope that staying true to himself would ultimately lead to a brighter path. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind for Keanu. Despite his efforts to stay composed, the weight of the controversy continued to press down on him. Every morning began with fresh headlines, each one dissecting his actions and speculating about what might happen next. Social media was relentless, with debates raging endlessly. Supporters praised him for standing firm, while critics accused him of stubbornness and arrogance. The constant back and forth left Keanu feeling caught in a storm he couldn't escape. His team worked tirelessly behind the scenes trying to mitigate the damage. They reached out to influential figures in Hollywood, hoping to rally support for Keanu. Publicists drafted statements, strategized responses, and monitored public sentiment closely. Yet no matter how carefully they navigated the situation, it seemed like every move only fueled more discussion. Even when Keanu stayed silent, people interpreted his silence as defiance or indifference. It was as though the world refused to let him breathe. At the hotel, tensions reached a breaking point. Guests grew increasingly vocal about their dissatisfaction, with some even threatening legal action against the management for failing to enforce its policies. The hotel staff, already stretched thin, struggled to keep peace among the guests. Meanwhile, rumors circulated that high-profile visitors were canceling their reservations, citing discomfort over the ongoing drama. Faced with mounting pressure, the hotel's executives held an emergency meeting to decide their next steps. Privately, they debated whether allowing Keanu to remain at the property was worth the risk to their reputation. Keanu sensed the growing hostility around him. Whenever he ventured into the lobby or dining area, he could feel eyes following him, whispers trailing behind. Some guests glared openly, while others avoided him altogether, creating an awkward silence wherever he went. It wasn't just strangers who treated him differently. Hotel employees also seemed hesitant to interact with him, unsure of how to navigate the delicate situation. One staff member accidentally spilled coffee on his shirt while serving him breakfast, mumbling an apology before rushing away. These small moments added up, making Keanu feel increasingly isolated. Behind closed doors, discussions between the studio executives and Keanu's representatives grew tense. The studio had initially stood by him, believing the controversy would blow over quickly. But as the backlash persisted, their tone shifted. They expressed concerns about how the negative attention might affect box office numbers, particularly in regions where religious symbols sparked strong reactions. Executives hinted that Keanu's refusal to compromise could jeopardize not only the current project, but also future collaborations. Though they stopped short of issuing ultimatums, the message was clear: something needed to change. Keanu wrestled with these developments in private. He spent hours pacing his suite, replaying conversations in his head and weighing his options. On one hand, he understood the studio's position. They were running a business, after all, and profits mattered. On the other hand, he couldn't bring himself to remove the cross, knowing it represented far more than just a piece of jewelry. To take it off now would feel like surrendering to fear, letting external pressures dictate who he was allowed to be. The thought of compromising his values filled him with unease. Amidst the chaos, Keanu received unexpected support from unlikely sources. A few fellow actors, many of whom had faced similar controversies in their careers, reached out to offer advice and encouragement. One veteran actor called him late at night, sharing stories of how he too had been forced to choose between staying true to himself and pleasing others. "You'll lose sleep over this," the actor admitted. "But trust me, you'll never regret standing your ground." Those words resonated deeply with Keanu, reinforcing his resolve to see things through. Publicly, Keanu remained quiet, avoiding interviews or social media posts that might reignite the debate. Instead, he focused on fulfilling his professional commitments, showing up to events with professionalism and grace. Fans noticed his resilience, flooding comment sections and forums with messages of support. Campaigns like "We Stand with Keanu" gained momentum, with thousands urging the studio and hotel to respect his decision. For every critic who accused him of being selfish, there were dozens of voices reminding everyone that freedom of expression mattered, even for celebrities. Despite the growing support, cracks began to show in Keanu's career. The studio announced delays in promotional activities tied to his film, citing scheduling conflicts. Industry insiders whispered that these delays signaled trouble ahead, hinting that recasting discussions were becoming more serious. Casting directors reportedly started reaching out to other actors, gauging their interest in taking over Keanu's role. While nothing was confirmed yet, the mere possibility sent shockwaves through Hollywood and straight into Keanu's heart. 1. Evening. Sitting alone on the balcony of his suite, Keanu stared out at the city lights below. The cross hung quietly around his neck, a constant presence amid the turmoil. He thought about everything that had happened, the accusations, the arguments, the strained relationships, and wondered if standing his ground was worth the cost. Would history remember him as someone who fought for his beliefs, or as someone whose stubbornness cost him everything? The uncertainty gnawed at him, leaving him restless and unsure. Yet even in his darkest moments, Keanu found solace in the knowledge that he hadn't compromised who he was. Removing the cross might have silenced the critics temporarily, but it wouldn't have changed the fact that he'd given in to fear. That realization gave him strength, helping him face each new day with quiet determination. As dawn broke over the city skyline, Keanu made a silent promise to himself. No matter what happened next, he would continue to live authentically, holding onto the values that defined him. Little did he know, the studio's patience was wearing thin. Behind the scenes, executives finalized plans to address the situation decisively. What they decided would alter the course of Keanu's career forever, and force him to confront the true cost of staying true to himself. By the 5th day of the controversy, the strain on Keanu was undeniable. The constant scrutiny, the whispered accusations, and the mounting pressure from all sides had taken a toll. His usually calm demeanor began to crack under the weight of it all. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his once confident stride now seemed heavier, slower. Yet, despite the exhaustion that clung to him like a second skin, Keanu refused to back down. The cross still hung around his neck, its simple silver surface catching the light whenever he moved, a quiet but unyielding symbol of his resolve. The studio executives finally made their move. They called an emergency meeting with Keanu and his team, presenting them with a stark ultimatum. Either Keanu agreed to stop wearing the cross in public settings related to the film's promotion, or they would be forced to recast his role. Their reasoning was blunt and business-driven. "We can't afford to lose audiences over this," one executive said, leaning across the table. "It's not personal. It's about protecting the project." For Keanu, however, it felt deeply personal. To him, removing the cross wasn't just a minor compromise, it was an erasure of something sacred. Keanu listened silently as the executives laid out their case, his jaw tightening with each word. When it was his turn to speak, he didn't raise his voice or lash out. Instead, he spoke softly but firmly, explaining why taking off the cross wasn't an option for him. "This isn't about making a statement," he said, meeting their gazes, one by one. "It's about staying true to who I am. If I take it off, I'm not being honest. Not with you, not with my fans, and not with myself." His words hung in the air, met with awkward silence. The executives exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable, but unmoved. They thanked him for his perspective but reiterated that their decision stood unless he changed his mind. As the meeting ended, Keanu walked out feeling a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He understood the studio's position. After all, they were investing millions into the film, and their primary goal was profit. But at the same time, he couldn't help but feel betrayed. Hadn't he given them years of hard work and dedication? Didn't they know him well enough to realize how much the cross meant to him? These questions swirled in his mind as he returned to his hotel suite, where he spent hours pacing back and forth, replaying the conversation in his head. Word of the studio's ultimatum leaked almost immediately, spreading like wildfire across news outlets and social media platforms. Fans erupted in outrage, flooding the studio's official accounts with messages demanding they reconsider. Hashtags like "Keep Keanu" and "Respect his beliefs" trended worldwide, with supporters arguing that no amount of money was worth sacrificing someone's integrity. Petitions circulated online, gathering hundreds of thousands of signatures within hours. Meanwhile, critics seized the opportunity to accuse Keanu of putting his ego above professionalism, claiming he should have been willing to make sacrifices for the sake of the project. Amidst the chaos, Keanu found himself in unfamiliar territory. For years, he had built a reputation as a humble, hard-working actor who prioritized collaboration and kindness. Now he was being painted as difficult and uncompromising, a label that stung more than he cared to admit. Friends and colleagues reached out to check on him, offering words of encouragement and reminding him that standing up for what you believe in is never easy. One close friend sent him a text that read simply, "Stay strong. The truth always wins in the end." Those few words brought tears to Keanu's eyes, reinforcing his determination to hold his ground. The hotel, meanwhile, continued to grapple with the fallout. Guests complained loudly about the ongoing drama, while staff members scrambled to keep operations running smoothly. Management issued yet another statement, reiterating their commitment to neutrality and inclusivity, while urging both sides to find common ground. Privately, though, they began discussing whether asking Keanu to leave might be the only way to restore peace. The thought of evicting such a high-profile guest weighed heavily on them, but the complaints showed no sign of stopping. For Keanu, the situation became unbearable. Everywhere he turned, people were talking about him, judging him, criticizing him, or defending him. Strangers approached him in the hotel hallways, some offering hugs and others delivering harsh lectures. Reporters camped outside the building, shouting questions whenever he stepped outside. Even sitting alone in his room provided little relief. His phone buzzed nonstop with notifications, each one pulling him deeper into the maelstrom. It felt like the world wouldn't let him rest until he gave in, or disappeared altogether. One evening, overwhelmed and exhausted, Keanu decided to take a long walk through the city. He slipped out of the hotel unnoticed, blending into the crowd, as he wandered aimlessly through dimly lit streets. The cool night air helped clear his mind, allowing him to reflect on everything that had happened. As he passed by shops, cafes, and parks, he noticed ordinary people going about their lives, laughing, chatting, enjoying moments of peace. Watching them reminded him of simpler times before fame, before the constant spotlight, when he could live freely without worrying about how every action might be perceived. Eventually, Keanu found himself standing in front of a small church tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. Drawn by curiosity, and perhaps a need for solace, he stepped inside. The interior was modest but serene, bathed in soft candlelight and filled with the faint scent of incense. He sat in one of the pews, bowing his head as memories flooded back. He thought about his mother, his faith, and the countless moments in his life when the cross had served as a source of strength. In that moment, surrounded by stillness, Keanu realized that no matter what happened next, he couldn't abandon the values that defined him. Letting go of the cross would mean letting go of himself, and that was a price he wasn't willing to pay. When he returned to the hotel later that night, Keanu felt a renewed sense of clarity. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Losing. The role in the film would deal a significant blow to his career, and the backlash might follow him for years to come, but deep down, he believed that staying true to himself was worth any sacrifice. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he whispered a silent prayer, asking for strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Tomorrow would bring new battles, but for now, Keanu allowed himself a moment of peace, knowing he had done the right thing, even if the world didn't understand yet. The following morning, Keanu woke up with a sense of calm he hadn't felt in days. The weight of the controversy still hung over him, but something inside had shifted. He realized that while he couldn't control how others reacted or what decisions they made, he could control his own actions and his own integrity. That realization gave him strength, even as he prepared for the worst. News arrived shortly after breakfast. The studio had officially announced its decision to recast his role in the film. It was a devastating blow, one that would ripple through his career and leave lasting scars. But instead of bitterness, Keanu felt a quiet resolve. The announcement spread quickly, dominating headlines and sparking renewed debates across social media. Some fans expressed outrage at the studio's choice, accusing them of prioritizing profit over principle. Others argued that Keanu should have compromised, claiming his refusal to remove the cross proved he wasn't serious about his craft. Amidst the noise, Keanu chose not to respond publicly. Instead, he focused on processing the news privately, leaning on close friends and family for support. They reminded him that setbacks were temporary and that true fans would always respect someone who stood by their beliefs. In the days that followed, Keanu faced a wave of professional challenges. Offers for future projects slowed to a trickle as industry insiders whispered about his difficult reputation. Casting directors hesitated to work with him, fearing similar controversies might arise. Even brands that once sought him out for endorsements grew cautious, pulling back their interest. For someone who had spent decades building a successful career, the sudden silence was jarring. Yet Keanu refused to let it define him. He poured his energy into smaller, independent projects that aligned with his values, films and initiatives, where creative freedom outweighed commercial expectations. Meanwhile, public opinion began to shift. As time passed, people started reflecting on the incident more deeply. Many admired Keanu's unwavering commitment to staying true to himself, recognizing that standing by your beliefs often comes at great personal cost. Fans launched campaigns to bring him back into the spotlight, organizing screenings of his past films and flooding social media with messages of love and encouragement. Articles praising his authenticity appeared in major publications, highlighting how rare it was to see someone prioritize principles over popularity in today's world. Slowly but surely, Keanu's image transformed from difficult actor to symbol of resilience. One unexpected outcome of the controversy was the connection Keanu forged with communities around the globe. People from all walks of life reached out to share their own stories of struggle, how they too had faced pressure to conform or hide parts of themselves to fit in. These messages resonated deeply with Keanu, reminding him that his decision had meaning beyond his personal journey. Inspired by these interactions, he began using his platform to advocate for causes close to his heart, including religious freedom and mental health awareness. Speaking at events and sharing heartfelt posts online, he encouraged others to embrace who they were without fear of judgment. Despite the initial backlash, the hotel also underwent changes. Guests continued to voice concerns about neutrality and inclusivity, prompting management to rethink their policies. Rather than enforcing strict rules, they introduced open forums where visitors could discuss cultural differences and mutual respect. Surprisingly, Keanu became an indirect inspiration for this shift. His story highlighted the importance of understanding diverse perspectives and finding ways to coexist peacefully. Though he never returned to the hotel, its staff occasionally mentioned his name during meetings, acknowledging the impact his courage had on their approach to hospitality. As months turned into years, Keanu rebuilt his career on his own terms. While he didn't return to the heights of mainstream fame immediately, he found fulfillment in projects that allowed him to stay authentic. Independent filmmakers sought him out for roles requiring depth and vulnerability, knowing he brought honesty to every character he portrayed. Audiences responded enthusiastically, appreciating the sincerity he infused into each performance. Awards and accolades eventually followed, proving that success doesn't always come from chasing trends. It often stems from staying true to yourself. Looking back on the ordeal, Keanu viewed it as a turning point in his life. It taught him valuable lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the power of conviction. He understood now that standing firm in your beliefs isn't easy, but it's necessary if you want to live authentically. The cross remained around his neck, unchanged and unyielding, a reminder of the journey he endured and the person he chose to be. Though critics still existed, their voices no longer held the same power over him. He knew who he was, and that knowledge gave him peace. Keanu's story became a testament to the idea that sometimes doing what's right means facing adversity head-on. By refusing to compromise his values, he inspired countless individuals to reflect on their own lives and choices. His legacy extended far beyond acting. It became a symbol of courage and authenticity in a world often driven by compromise. And, though the road ahead remained uncertain, Keanu walked it with confidence, knowing he had stayed true to himself, even when it cost him everything.